Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. Thank you so much for being part of our beautiful Reading with Your Kids family. You can now find the Reading with Your Kids podcast on Amazon Music. We are so happy. Our guest today is Shannon Anderson. She is here to talk to us about why is for yet and how we can help our kids develop a growth mindset. Before we invite Shannon into the studio, we have an announcement to make. We have a brand new Reading with Your Kids certified great read, My Hair Went on Vacation by Paula Quinn. Last week we had the pleasure of meeting Paula and Rosie Quinn, mother-daughter team, behind My Hair Went on Vacation. This is an absolutely wonderful book. We absolutely love it. It's a great rhyming book, and it's based on Rosie's story. Rosie wakes up one morning to find that there are curls on her pillow instead of her head. We soon find out that Rosie was born with alopecia, an that's easy for me to say, an autoimmune disease that causes hair loss. We also find out that Rosie has an unbeatable spirit. That's something that we found out live and in person. Rosie tells us that going to school was hard, that kids pointed and stared, and it really hurt to hear their unkind words. Her parents helped her learn to be kind and graceful, to show the world a bald girl with a smile on her face. There are so many wonderful conversations that families can have reading this book together. Conversations about facing difficult situations with a positive attitude, understanding that true beauty shines from within, and having empathy for others who are different. My Hair Went on Vacation is beautifully illustrated by Chiara Savate. Your kids will love Rosie's bright green eyes and radiant smile. This would be a wonderful addition to any family, school, or public library. It's a wonderful book, and we are so excited that My Hair Went on Vacation by Paula Quinn is our latest Reading with Your Kids certified great read. Joining us right now from the beautiful state of Indiana, she is returning to the show to celebrate two great new books. Why is for Yet is the picture book. Mindset Power is the middle grade book. Please welcome back to the show, Shannon Anderson. Shannon, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me back.
You are so welcome. Before we get into it, I just need to give a big shout out. Shannon is one of my favorite teachers. She invited me to perform at her school last year. I had the most amazing time, and I had so much fun visiting her classroom. Such great kids. I'm excited to talk about the growth mindset with you because that was one of the things that I felt from all of your kids. They were so positive and felt so empowered to learn. And I know that's something that you instill in your students.
Well, thank you. Well, we definitely enjoyed having you, and the whole convocation was amazing. My kids felt extra special getting to have you come to our classroom and do a personal visit. So thank you so much for that. But yes, that's my goal, that my students would feel empowered. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that is because of growth mindset thinking.
Yeah. Where did you, where did the passion for this teaching growth mindset come for you?
I can't really trace it back to where it all started. I've always been one of those that reads more self-improvement books than anything else. And I just kind of stumbled upon, Carol Dweck's work with growth mindset in her book Mindset, and just watching different videos, and the word just kept coming up and coming up. And at the time I was a coach at my school. And so I was in charge of some of the professional development for the teachers. And so one of the PDs that I had was on growth mindset thinking and the important things that we can do as teachers to make a difference in our classroom by teaching our kids about what the difference is between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset.
All right. So let's define what a growth mindset is, please.
Sure. So a mindset is basically your set of beliefs about something. And growth, of course, if you think of a flower growing, we can think of of it in terms of our ability to learn and grow ourselves. And so a growth mindset is the thinking that we don't have a glass ceiling, that we don't have like this certain place that we get to and we stop learning, or that there are certain things that we can't learn. Something I like to point out to students that kind of blows their mind when we're talking about the brain is that the brain that you woke up with this morning is different than the brain you have right now, even if you just woke up an hour ago, because our neurons, which are our brain cells, are doing so many things, and we have billions of these going around firing in our mind. And every time we make a decision, it fires these different neurons to do different things. And so our neurons, they have this saying where it's whatever fires together wires together. So the thoughts you have more often and the things you practice and try more often, those are going to wire together. So if you've heard the term neuroplasticity, what that means is, the neurons are able to actually change the wiring of your brain because of the decisions that you make and what you keep doing. So, for example, if I'm learning to tie my shoes, then the neurons that are firing to the specific motor neurons, the muscles that I need, and the thinking neurons for thinking about the process of learning to tie my shoe, what the steps are, is as that's happening, all those neurons are firing. But then when I practice it again a little bit later or even the next day, those same neurons are going to be needed to do that task. And the more I practice it, the more those neurons form those connections and get stronger and stronger. And I don't know about you, but for me, if I lean over to tie my shoes, I don't have to think about, okay, wait, I need to take a lace and make a bunny loop. I don't think about that anymore. It's just automatic because I've already formed that neural pathway. Now, on the other side, the bad news is that we can actually lose some of those pathways if we don't practice something. So, for example, when I was in high school and college, I studied Spanish. And, when I went to Mexico with one of my Spanish professors in college on a trip, I could carry on a conversation. It probably wasn't pretty, but I could carry on a conversation. And I haven't done that in so long that I still know the basics. I mean, I could count to 100 for you. I could say the alphabet and some basic, I could order in a Mexican restaurant. But as far as being able to carry on a conversation, I've lost some of that connection that was in my brain for those things because I haven't practiced it. And our brains are very efficient, and they will prune things that aren't being used to continue to form pathways that are being used at the time.
Mm-hmm. If you're an athlete, one of the phrases that you hear a lot as an athlete is developing muscle memory.
Yes.
And a lot of times, and it's deceiving because we think, our muscles have a memory and our muscles are remembering how to do this. In reality, it's what you're talking about. Our brain, which controls our muscles, goes through the process of how to fire the different neurons to make the muscles move in a certain way. And so the muscle memory is actually in our heads. It's firing down these pathways that we create as we practice things over and over again.
Absolutely, yes. And you can tie that to learning to ride a bike and having that muscle memory and balance, to learning to shoot a basket into the basketball hoop, And I learn from each time that I don't make the basket. And that's another huge concept about growth mindset thinking, is that we learn from our mistakes. As a matter of fact, in my classroom, we call our mistakes growth spurts rather than mistakes, because we grow from everything that we learn. So I just kind of made up that term, and thankfully it got put in the book. I insisted. I was like, we need this term to be our mistakes. They're growth spurts. They help us grow and learn. So if I go to shoot the basket and it's a total air ball, doesn't even make it to the rim, then I just learned something about, okay, I didn't either push off enough with my legs, or maybe my arms, maybe my aim was off. And so then when I go to try again, and I talk about this in the book Mindset Power, the success cycle, where we try something, and then we fail, which I don't mean to sound negative. Fail means first attempt in learning. So we fail, but then we learn from it. But then the key is we learned from that failure, and then we improve in some way. So you're changing something before you try again, and then the cycle continues. So you try again, and you may have another fail or setback of some kind. You learn from it, you improve or change in some way, and then you try again, and it just keeps going. So when I go to try again for that basket, If this time it goes way over the backboard, I realize, whoa, I gave it too much power that time. And so then I'm going to learn from that, change it again, and those neural pathways are going to get stronger, and I'm going to get to the point where I'm making more baskets than I'm missing, hopefully. And again, that muscle memory is starting to take over, and I'm starting to learn about what it feels like to have it go in and what it feels like to do the right aiming and the right pushing off and all of that.
So, I think we're, in our society, we're really comfortable with the idea of practice and, when it comes to athletics, when it comes to certain types of art like dance, magic. But I don't know if we're as comfortable about the idea when it comes to academics and learning. I don't think we always associate, practicing and making mistakes and learning from those mistakes when we're talking about school. It was like you take a test and you fail. That's it. You move on to the next subject. How can we apply this growth mindset into our learning?
Sure. And I see this most in the classroom during math time, it seems.
Oh, okay.
So, and many times, like you said, it can be something like a physical goal that you're going toward, like in sports. Sometimes it's a behavioral thing. But when we're talking academically, I see it most often in math during problem solving, especially like a multi-step problem. Things like that. And so I try to encourage my kids through lessons in different growth mindset concepts, like resilience, for example. I have this little Weeble Wobble that I demonstrate with, and we talk about, they weeble and they wobble, but they don't fall down. And so what happens, when we get knocked over and this problem seems really hard, we need to be resilient and be able to get back up again and try again. Using different models and mentor texts, things where you can show examples of failures that ended up becoming a success, talking to the kids about how, especially like in science, like experiments and things, they're all based on all of those trials and failures to get to the point where you are having those successes because of those trials. So it's a matter of seeing what things don't work to narrow it down to, okay, so the options we have left and the strategies we have left, what can we see that does work? Unfortunately, in schools today, we do so much assessing. I think sometimes that hinders kids from taking those creative risks, or it might possibly keep them from wanting to try because they are afraid of that assessment and that's maybe going to be a label for who they are or what they're capable of doing or not doing. So it's an unfortunate thing that, assessment is part of our schooling, but it also, if we can frame it in a way that assessment is feedback and that feedback is important. I always tell my students when I go to a writing conference, I pay extra money to have someone give me critical feedback of a story I'm working on because I want to know how can I get it better. And so teaching kids to look at feedback as a positive thing and not as a thing where we're trying to tell you what's wrong or, that you didn't do it right, but instead to show ways that you could improve it because, like I tell the kids, I want my book to be the best book possible. I want my story to be the best story possible. And so when people can point things out to me that I could improve to make it better, then that's amazing. I always tell kids on author visits, they're so lucky. All these kids sitting in the gym are so lucky because their teachers will give them that feedback for free and I have to pay for it to get, someone to give me their opinion on what needs changed and what can stay. So it's so important to teach the kids resilience and to teach them, I call it being on the struggle train and having, surrounding them with and having them help create inspirational sayings and reminders such as I can do hard things or I don't have this yet. Thus the title of the book, Y is for Yet, the powerful word of yet. You may not have it now, but, you just don't have it yet. You can get there and we have the ability to get there, which is the whole concept of growth mindset is that you do have the ability there. It's not that someone is born, when they come out of the womb, they don't already know how to swim like Michael Phelps. He had to put in lots of hours and lots of practice to get to the level that he is at. I always share with the kids lots of different analogies to try to bring this point home because, it seems so obvious, but if you just keep telling kids, you can do it without an example to go with it or something to anchor it to, then it's kind of meaningless and sounds like, the Charlie Brown wah, 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 wah. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so thinking of the iceberg, when we see an iceberg, we just see the tip. So when we're looking at other people and seeing their success, don't let that be a comparison trap where you're thinking, well, they can do it so well. I'm just going to step down. That's for them, not for me. I'm not good at drawing, or I'm not a math person, or I'm not an athlete. And so thinking about, well, what's below the surface of the water though? What are you missing that you're not seeing that they have done differently? And then when you can pick that apart and you can see, oh, wow, I guess they practice with a personal coach for 4 hours a day. And, oh, I'm not doing that. And, oh, it looks like they do this special regimen for how they eat and how they take care of their body and their brain. I guess I'm not doing that. And so then to see, it's not necessarily a level playing field and you're not comparing apples to apples there. Mm-hmm. So I think those kinds of things too can help. And there are so many books on famous failures, from Einstein to, even Ben Franklin, different people that have invented different things, what they went through, the trials, the setbacks, the hard times that we don't necessarily see. We know them for what they did do well when it finally got to that point, but not seeing the before part.
Mm-hmm. How can we as parents, with my son, when he was, especially in middle school and in high school, when he was in athletics and, he lost the game or whatever, it was easy for me to sit down and, hey, you got to get better the next time. What do you have to do? It was different when it came to academics because he came home with that test paper and there was a big red letter on it and it wasn't the letter that we hoped for. It wasn't, I wasn't able to kind of sit and think and, let's sit down and see what you missed, kid. It's, it was more like, how come you're not working hard? You're not spending enough time on your homework. How can we be more supportive as parents when it comes to that stuff?
Okay. So a couple of things. And one of the things that is a huge takeaway from Carol Dweck is her experiments that she did on how you talk to a kid, how you praise a kid. And so what she did was she had all of these students try this task. And half of the students, while they were working on the task, were praised for, oh my goodness, you're so smart. You're intelligent. What are you, Einstein? And they were praised all about like their innate ability. Versus the other half of the kids were all praised for their effort and their work. Like, great job. Oh, you must have really worked hard on this. Oh, you spent a lot of time on this. Nice job trying different strategies. And so it was specific to their effort that was put in. And the kids that, so after all of the kids accomplished all of these things, then they were given a choice on if they wanted this task or this task to do. And one task was easier and one was harder. The kids that were praised for being smart chose the easier task because they wanted to keep that label of being smart. Versus the kids who were praised for putting in a lot of effort and trying really hard were more apt to choose the more challenging task. And then it's so interesting because then after that, even the kids that were doing the more challenging task actually did better because of all the psychological thinking there of I work hard, I can do this, I try. They ended up doing better than the kids that did an easier task. And not only that, it goes a step further because when they were interviewing these kids afterward, the kids that were praised for effort wanted to hear the feedback and they wanted to know how to improve. The kids that were praised for smarts did not really care as much about the feedback. And the other thing was a lot of those kids who didn't do well lied about the results to try to keep that label. And so it's just amazing the power of that and what we can learn from that, our takeaway in that, making sure that we're always praising the effort of the student, the athlete, whatever, versus saying good job, because then they might feel, or not saying good job, but saying, you're so smart or whatever, or saying something that is innate, that's just like a given talent, then that's not going to be as effective because then they're going to be fighting to get that label again instead of striving to work hard to achieve something. And then another thing too is being careful how we set our goals. So you've, I'm sure, all heard of SMART goals, the specific, measurable, all of that. Well, for my book, Mindset Power, I made a smaller version of that just called SET. You set a goal. And so the S is for specific. The E is for your effort. And the T is for your time frame. And so in this, I felt like this was an easier model for my kids to follow in my third grade classroom when I was teaching in third grade. And I, at all times, had a goal board on one of my walls, and there were spots for Post-it notes. And the kids were encouraged to set goals that were less than a month long. I wanted them to be shorter term so that they could actually, see the progress, get those accomplishments, be able to, tackle those and then set new goals throughout the year. We did other things like vision boards and things for longer term goals, but for the purpose of this goal board, we had short term goals on Post-it notes. And so for an example, if someone wanted to improve, let's say, their spelling, then instead of just saying, well, I want to be a better speller, that's not very specific. And so the specific part would be maybe on my next 3 spelling tests, I won't miss more than 2, something like that. And then for the effort part, this is crucial. You want to say, well, how is this going to happen? What is your effort that's going to take place to get you to that goal? So, for example, are you going to make it a daily practice? Or are you going to practice on the bus with a friend from our class who has the same list? Are you going to write your words a certain number of times a week? Are you going to find an app on your iPad or device that will help you practice these words? Are you going to have your mom or dad quiz you on these words, leading up to the test? How are you going to put the effort in to get to that goal where you're only missing 1 or 2 or none? And then the time frame, of course, which was set in the goal of the next 3 tests. So that would be over 3 weeks' time. And so then what happens, though, is, okay, those 3 weeks have passed. So either A, they made their goal and they can take that off and they can go visit the celebration table, which I have a Celebrate Success table in my classroom with all kinds of noisemakers and things. Or they might need to tweak one of those 3 parts. So is it in the specificity of the goal that wasn't right, that they don't really know if they met the goal? Is it the effort part? So maybe they weren't putting in enough effort. Maybe they didn't try all of those things I listed. They just tried 1 or 2. And maybe it's time to try a different way. Maybe it's the time frame. Maybe you need to give yourself more time. So maybe we want to say, let's just look at the next test only. I'm going to focus all my effort on that next test. And so we'll just do the time frame, shorter time frame. Or maybe you need a longer time frame if it's something else that you're working on and you're not quite there yet. Maybe you need to give yourself a full month to meet a certain goal of some kind.
What great skills to teach our kids. And it's great that you've created these 2 books. Why is Fillette? For young kids, I'm thinking that this is a neat story about a character that learns this lesson.
Well, the way, and I have to give a shout out to Jacob Suva, the illustrator, because this book is just beautiful. It blew me away when I got to see it. So what I did was I wanted to take each letter of the alphabet kind of as a structure or vehicle to talk about all the different components of growth mindset. And so it starts out with just a little intro about growth mindset, but throughout the book, you're going to see these different kids trying different things and their progress throughout using some of the growth mindset things, such as A is for ability and B is for your brain. We talk about neurons in here. We talk about determination. We talk about your effort, how important feedback is. I'm just kind of skipping through here, I know. How important it is to notice things, notice how things work and when they don't work and why. Optimism is a big part. Progress, setting those goals. Sometimes we have to work, I love this. You don't always get what you wish for, but you can often get what you work for. Sometimes things take extra time. And of course, the yet. If you feel there's something you cannot do, remember the word yet. I can't solve this problem yet, but if I keep trying, I know I can get there. And then the Z is for zany. Zany ideas can lead to amazing possibilities. And then in the back, I have all kinds of, I have a glossary and I have all kinds of activities and extensions that teachers and caregivers can do to go along with it. And even though when you think of an alphabet book, you think of a younger, audience. I had someone yesterday that on Instagram, she was a 4th grade teacher and said that she used it in her 4th grade classroom as an introduction to growth mindset. And that's, when I was teaching 3rd grade, if I would have had this book at that time, I would have used it even in my 3rd grade classroom. So, don't let the alphabet part fool you that it's, something that's helping kids necessarily learn their ABCs. It was more of a structure for me to be able to put in a lot of concepts in one book and tie them all together with something. And so I just chose to do that through the use of the letters.
Yeah. Sometimes it boggles my mind that we haven't been teaching this in schools. We teach, expect kids to know this. I heard someone say the other day that education system isn't set up to teach kids how to think. It's set up to teach kids how to recite or to parrot back information that they memorize.
Yeah, that's really sad. Yeah, I have too heard phrases such as we teach kids how to take tests, and that just makes me so sad. I hope that that's not really the case. I know that it's a real feeling though, coming from a teacher standpoint and a parent standpoint. I have felt that at times. But we really do need to be focusing on how to get these kids to think, and not just how to think to solve this one particular problem that might appear on this test, but to problem solve and to figure things out that will apply to their lives. Because let's face it, the things we're training them for right now, we're training them for jobs that don't even exist yet. I mean, think about the things that didn't even exist when I was a kid and I was learning, all these different skill sets, but then there are all these other jobs that, I wasn't trained those skill sets. Think about when you go through, especially like in college, for example, I took lots of classes on the philosophy and theories behind teaching and all the nitty gritty stuff to be able to pass the teaching exam. But the thing that was most valuable to me as a teacher was the actual student teaching, the actual doing of it. And I think most people can probably relate to that in internships and other things where they get that chance to have a mentor that's actually in the job, or an internship, or, the student teaching type thing, apprenticeships, all of those kinds of things I feel like are so powerful to prepare our kids, and that our jobs as teachers are to get those examples and opportunities in front of them as much as possible. And while we're presenting the different possibilities, also teaching them that any of those possibilities is within their realm if they're putting in enough time and effort and practice. And especially at the elementary level, I feel like we need to be flooding them with all of these ideas so that they don't just think of, like, especially I see this in my hometown. We're a very small town, and so you don't see a huge variety of occupations. And so unfortunately, a lot of kids don't think out of the box, and they think, okay, well, I'll become a teacher or a firefighter, or, the things that they see in their community, and don't realize, oh, wow, I could be a designer of this, or I could, some of the things that might exist in bigger cities, or they might exist here, but you don't hear as much about them or see them as much. And that's one reason I bring in guest experts. I try to do it every other week, where I bring in a community member or Skype someone in or Zoom someone in to talk about their jobs and their careers. And of course, I preface, the person coming in, I'll prep them by asking them to mention, oh, by the way, how do you use math in your job? And, oh, by the way, do you use writing for anything? And the kids are blown away when they hear these things. I always make my husband come in. He's the police chief of our town, and talk about police work, because that seems to be a popular one that kids want to know about. And they had no idea that he does a lot of writing. He has to write a lot of reports and narratives, and he has to have good speaking skills to not only talk to the city council every time they meet, but also to be able to testify in court and do those types of things. And so we need to make sure our kids are prepared and know how to do all of those skills so that they understand, so many of them want to be a vet. I always bring in a vet every year to talk, because they think they get to play with animals all day, but not realizing the complex math that it's very important to get the medicine right, and you have to know your math and measurement and those types of things to be able to take care of these animals. And so kids need to be prepared not only for, the academic side of basic math and basic reading and writing type things, but we need to prepare them for understanding what careers entail. But then, like you said, on top of all of that, the icing on top is giving them the mindset to pursue those things in the first place.
Yeah. So, I just love this. This is fascinating. But real quick, what, your mindset power, we touched on a little bit, but just a little bit more about what our middle grade kids are going to experience with mindset power.
Sure. So this has been really cool for me because even though it just released recently, I'm teaching 2 Mindset Power book studies online with kids all over the world. And so I've had a chance with each chapter we go through to hear their input on what they feel about the various topics. Like right now we're right at the beginning, like what is a growth mindset, and talking about our brains and the neurons and all of those things. But it's been really interesting to hear the perspective of the students and how they feel about some of these things when people are preaching growth mindset to them, and how much of it they really believe and how much they believe in themselves. And one of the first things we do is there's a little quiz in the book about fixed mindset versus growth mindset. And really everyone is mixed mindset. We're not all growth. We're not all fixed. It really depends on what it is you're looking at or tackling at the time on, where you fall on that spectrum. But it was interesting when we did a little quiz on what they think fixed mindset is versus what they think a growth mindset is. And there were some revelations there that they didn't know. Like, for instance, to say I'm awesome at this sounds like this great positive thing, but it's actually fixed mindset thinking, because you're thinking, I've mastered it. I've made it. And so when you think in that way, like I've got this, I'm there. Well, but you still could improve, right? And so teaching kids that, not to limit yourself and to be careful how you say things, because it can actually be, a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, well, I've already got this. Let's move on. It could be, I'm doing really well at this. I wonder if I could shave a second off my time next time I swim. Or I wonder if I could, get, if they're still doing timed math tests or whatever, I wonder if I could get 3 more done in a minute, or whatever it is. How can we do that just one step better? What ways can we improve? And that's part of what my subtitle is, A Kid's Guide to Growing Better Every Day. And that's one thing, I don't know if you remember from being in my classroom, when you first walk in, across the whole top of the wall is, in some small way, better every day. And that's kind of my motto is, not necessarily are we going to grow better in everything we do, of course not, but what is one thing that I can take to the next level today? What are some small steps I can take toward a goal, or to improve in whatever it is, my behavior, in my health, in my academics, in, my physical abilities, anything you can improve in some small way every day.
Wow. I just, this has been such a fascinating topic for me. It's something that I try to do in my life, is something that my beautiful wife and I have tried to share with our kids. I think we did a pretty good job. They're both growth mindset people, I think. Well, we're mixed, of course, but I know folks are going to want to learn more about this, and they're going to want to learn more about you and all the great books that you've created. So where can folks go to connect with you, maybe to invite you to a conference or a virtual visit in a classroom?
Sure. So ShannonIsTeaching.com is my website, so that's pretty easy. And there is a contact me tab on there, so you can just click that and it will send an email directly to me. Also, if you want, while you're on the website, I think almost every page I have a place where you can sign up. I have a free newsletter I do the first Friday of every month. And I think if you sign up, you can go to past newsletters. And of course, this past one, since both of my books were releasing, are all focused on growth mindset. So there are lots of freebies on there that are PDF downloads, like a growth mindset card matchup game that you can just print off and have the kids, you can give each of the kids a card and they can try to match up a fixed mindset. They can try to find someone with the growth mindset saying that's the opposite. And you can, make charts. I have surveys. I have all kinds of things. You can also connect with me on all the different social media channels, but at Shannon Teaches is my Twitter, if you want to go on there. Author Shannon Anderson is my Facebook, and Shannon is Teaching is my Instagram. I'm kind of newer on there. So, but yeah, those are different ways that you can connect with me. I know my publisher for both of these books, Free Spirit Publishing, if you go on there, they asked me to create a teacher guide. And it's like a 25-page guide to go along with Mindset Power. So if you want to be able to do a book study with your whole class or in small groups or an after-school club or something, that is a completely free download. So you can go in there onto the Free Spirit Publishing website, and if you put in the search bar Shannon Anderson, my books will pop up. That's the easiest way probably to find them. And right by Mindset Power has the leader guide, and the leader guide is completely free. You can just print it on off, and it has activities and discussion questions to go along with every single chapter.
Awesome. We've had a fascinating time speaking with our friend Shannon Anderson. Be sure to check out Growth Mindset for your middle grade kids and Why is for Yet for your younger kids, and even your middle grade kids too. Shannon, thanks so much for being back on the show.
Thank you. Anytime.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We'll be welcoming Bollywood star Vaishnavi McDonald. She is going to be celebrating her brand new book, The Invisible Hand of God. It really is a fascinating journey of self-discovery. You don't want to miss it. That's the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so very wonderful. Of course, we want to thank one of my favorite teachers in the world, Shannon Anderson. Be sure to check out her wonderful books. Help your kids succeed in life and be happy by developing a growth mindset. Also want to thank my incredible team, my producer, Fatima Khan, my awesome author ambassador, Peggy Cotto. I want to thank my amazing daughter, Alejandra. Of course, I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me, but most of all, I want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.